My wife knows that if she had told me she had the trait, that would have been it for me. I'm someone who strongly believes in health over love. I do believe that God does heal today, but I believe also that he allows people to go through things so that he can get the glory. I think the first thing we have to understand is that sickle cell affects mostly black people. Don't be surprised when you see the word racism next to sickle cell, because it affects us, so of course we will be affected by everything that comes against black people.
All right, guys, wait, hold up. So we looked at the analytics, and apparently 25% of you who watch this podcast are not subscribed. Now, that doesn't make sense, because if you're watching this podcast, then you clearly like it and you clearly want more. So the best way to get more is to subscribe. And guess what? Even do another thing, subscribe. Hit that little bell button and put the notifications on. So when we post this exquisite content, right, you'll get it directly in your notifications. So subscribe right now. Thank you.
You inspire me heavily because, you know, I've seen you have a family, and it's just nice to know that, you can live your life normal despite the things that I hear growing up, like, you have to be careful who you get with and whatnot, which I do believe. But, you've done it. You've got, you're a married man, you've got your wife, you've got your beautiful children. Talk to me about, like, some of the experiences you went through when it comes to, like, choosing your partner and, building a family.
Yeah, I speak about this quite a lot in regards to relationship, because I always say I know how serious it was for people like ourselves growing up with sickle cell, and sharing a story about being in hospital at the same time as my mum, how traumatizing it was. I always knew that when I have a family, I don't want my children to go through the same pains and that I went through. So I think it's important that you ask questions when it comes to your partner. In past relationships, it was something that I didn't shy away from. So I asked questions about my partner's genotype. And when I met my wife, it's an early conversation that I had, asking her what her genotype was. Genotype is basically if you have AA, which is nothing, if you have AS, which is the trait, if you have SS, full-blown sickle cell. She told me she was AA, but then we had a conversation about her getting a test done so that I can have proof, because you just never know. Some parents will tell you got AA, but you got AS. I know plenty of people that found out they had trait in their 30s because they were never told. So
how does that impact dating?
I think it's a great thing because let's be real, bro. If someone had like something like a HIV or AIDS or something like that, and you know that you want to be serious with someone, it's a conversation you would have. Why would you not have a conversation about something like sickle cell? I know obviously it's on two different spectrums, but this is something that can affect your children if you want to have children one day. So I'm very serious about it. Like I told, my wife knows that if she had told me she had the trait, that would have been it for me. I'm someone who strongly believes in health over love.
I agree.
Yeah, so, if I see any trait or anything, regardless if we're engaged or whatnot, that would have had to be it for me. But thankfully, she doesn't. So it lessens the chances of our children having sickle cell. Yeah.
I think it's interesting you say that, because I've actually been in situations where I've met someone and I've told them that, if you have a trait, then I'm sorry, but this can't go any forward. And they've not only just one person, but this has happened a few times, where they've like reacted negatively to me saying that I won't go forward if you have a trait. So it's like you would choose your health over you would choose health over love. The love, this chance. I'm like,
exactly. I feel like if people understand what we've been through and go through, nobody would want to be there in the hospital with their child crying out in pain. Definitely. No one wants to go through that.
I always say that I would never bring a child with sickle cell into this world.
Right.
After going through all the trauma that I've been through, why would I bring a child into this world with sickle cell? So I am definitely against partnering up with someone who has a sickle cell trait, because then I'm just gonna have children with sickle cell.
Yeah.
So
there's
that's one of the. It's very important, like very early when I meet someone, to let them know I've got sickle cell and to know if they've got a trait or not. I've been very lucky to meet women that don't have a trait. So
has the reaction been more positive than negative though when it comes to you sharing that?
it's always been positive.
Okay.
I've never been in a situation where I've had someone react negatively to me having sickle cell, which I'm so happy about. I don't know if that's the same experience for you or for other people, but yeah, I've been quite fortunate to not go through that. If I had been through that, I don't know what kind of effects that would have had on me in my early years. And if I go through it now, it wouldn't move me in any way. You know, abundance. There's someone out there for you.
Right.
If no matter how someone feels. But have you?
Yeah, one time in a relationship actually where you know, the person told me that their mum said they couldn't get with anyone with sickle cell. And I was like, at the time I was young, so I didn't understand. When you grow up and think about these things, like, raw.
Yeah.
So thankfully, you know, it didn't work out for us.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the mum had an issue with it, so there's nothing you could do, man. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like she was stuck on that. So, but that's the only time I've ever thought about, like someone's actually had an issue because of my health.
Yeah.
Besides that, it's a conversation I've had, and you know, past relationships has been cool, but most importantly, my wife was cool with it. She knew about it because she's got family members that have sickle cell.
Yeah.
So she knows about it. She's not oblivious to it at all. She knew about it, and you know, I was able to teach her more about it. And now us growing, like being married for 5 years now, she's seen me in crisis and seen how it affects me in my everyday life. You know, at the age of 25, I've got a left hip replacement. So sometimes I've got back pain because I've been standing up all day, working all day, whatever. And she's able to understand and sympathize. So even just having a crisis where she's calling the ambulance, telling them my information, that helps. So I'm not having to have a crisis and be on the phone explaining what's going on. She's able to do that for me. So it's real helpful, as you said, to have that solid people around you that understand what you're going through, are able to explain your story for you. So that gives you a bit of peace as well.
Definitely. I think that's very important when it comes to choosing a partner. I can't be with someone who doesn't go out of their way to understand or even show interest in what I go through. But then it's a great thing because then it ensures that I get with someone who cares about what I go through. And yourself, you're blessed with your partner, you know, your wife, to be with someone who understands and can speak for you when you're going through it. That's a real blessing, man. You're blessed.
Thank you.
Yeah, man. I know you're enjoying this conversation, but I'm here to remind you that this episode is sponsored by Goodman Beard Oil, plant-based, chemical-free beard oil to soften and moisturize your facial hair. Order now, goodmanfactory.com, and use code GPOD1 and become a Goodman today. A Star, what would you say is like a way you deal with sickle cell when it comes to like your beliefs? Like what do you believe in?
Well, I'd say I'm a Christian.
Okay.
But my approach would be possibly something different to traditionalists, traditional approaches that you probably heard. Like, you know, God is able to heal you now, and just have enough faith. And I do believe that God does heal today, but I believe also that he allows people to go through things so that he can get the glory. So for me, God's allowed me to go through this and look at the opportunities I'm having to share about sickle cell. So if he doesn't heal me now, I believe there'll be a time in the afterlife where I'll be totally healed and free from all this pain. And not many Christians will probably have that approach. They'll be like, well, I've had people tell me, you know, you don't have enough faith, that's why you're not healed, and you keep sinning, that's why you keep going to hospital and all that kind of stuff. Throw away your medicine and have faith that God is healed. Bruv,
Pardon?
Yeah. So do you know what I'm saying? I've had that approach.
What?
I've had that approach a good few times. So I've had to understand for allowing to have my own relationship with God, reading the Bible for myself, not just through what someone's telling me, but understanding that what do the scriptures talk about when it comes to healing. And there's a guy called Apostle Paul in the Bible, and he talks about, I pleaded with God 3 times to take this thorn away from my flesh. We don't know what that thorn was. Could have been a sickness, could have been a sin, anything. But God says, my grace is sufficient for you, for in your weakness, my strength is made perfect. So I truly hold that dear to my heart, that in my weakness, God's strength is made perfect. And I've been able to see God's strength in my life through my times of weakness. Do you know what I'm saying? What about yourself?
Yeah, I grew up in a Christian household. I've even got tatted Isaiah 53 on my arm. By his stripes we are healed.
Yeah.
So I've always been a big believer that I am healed. It's something that my dad installed into me whilst I was going through crisis, that you are healed. You need to start believing that you are healed. And that definitely shaped who I am today, and the mentality that I've got today of what I believe in my mind does become reality. And I've used that as a framework to be able to manipulate what my experience is with sickle cell. So when I'm going through a crisis, I condition my brain to heal itself, to heal my body. I believe that what you think in your mind can manifest into the physical, and it does actually change what your body feels. I think your body follows your mind. This is just my beliefs. So when I say by his stripes I am healed, I am speaking into existence that I am healed whilst I'm going through the illusion of the physical pain of going through a crisis. And that's been a game changer for me. I'm thinking about, the healing process. I'm thinking that I am healed. And I feel like that speeds up the healing process. It's almost like magic. Like, I don't know. Right. It's quite magical the way I deal with it. My approach to going through a crisis. I do everything to get my mind to be in that moment, that mode of I am healed. The pain I'm going through has gone, and then it happens. So
let me ask you, what are your thoughts on stuff like, I've never spoken to someone about this properly, like CBD oil and things like that. Because I met someone recently, had a conversation about CBD oil and, the kind of holistic approach when it comes to taking care of your body and sickle cell. What are your thoughts on that?
I've used CBD oil. I question whether it's a placebo effect.
Right.
And I understand the science behind it. So it reduces inflammation. So it said that it reduces inflammation. That's definitely a good thing for anyone who's going through a sickle cell crisis. So I guess that is a positive.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's scientifically proven.
Right.
I'm not quite sure, but CBD oil, I don't think there's any harm in taking it.
Yeah.
But
did you find it actually helped? Like,
I don't know if it's a placebo effect. I don't know if it's because I'm taking it. I believe,
right.
Like I said, I
don't know if it's all in the mind or if it's actually working in the body.
I think when it comes to like pain, dealing with pain and dealing with crisis, a lot of it is the mental battle that you're going through in your head. So if you are putting things into place you're putting things into place to battle the crisis and the pain of what you're going through, then it will work. So whether that be prayer, CBD oil, taking CMOS to get that strength, and eating well, I'm sure these things do have a positive effect on your health, but I just question, is it my mind that is healing my body, because I believe that me taking these things is good for me. But I won't say it's one of those things where it's like you drop the CBD in your mouth and then it's like, my pain is at ease. It's never like that. Okay. So I'm not sure, but I will still take CBD oil, just because, there is a bit of science behind it to say that it does reduce inflammation in the body. So, But yeah, I think diet is definitely very important. There are a lot of foods that you can consume to reduce inflammation in the body. I definitely believe in reducing the mucus in your body too. I have this theory, I don't know if it's proven, but whenever I have consumed foods that are high in sugar, I'm more prone to having a crisis. That's just from my experiences. I don't know if it's actually true, but I do know that there is a correlation between moments where I've consumed a lot of sugar and, you know, a sickle cell crisis comes in. Who knows? Maybe it's the dehydration from the consumption of sugar. Because you know, like stuff like drinking Coke and Fanta and soda and actually dehydrates your body. So that could be a theory in itself. I know you're enjoying this conversation, but I'm here to remind you that this episode is sponsored by Goodman Beard Oil, plant-based, chemical-free beard oil to soften and moisturize your facial hair. Order now, goodmanfactory.com, and use code GPOD1 and become a Goodman today.
With me, I love food, so I feel like with I remember the first time trying to be a vegan. Like me and my wife do veganuary every January.
Okay.
And the first time I did it, I generally felt a change. I was like, wow. Like,
oh, really?
Yeah, plant-based.
Okay.
But I'm seeing the African in me. I love my meat, bro. Like heavy starch foods, all that stuff. Not all the time.
Yeah.
Excessively, but you know, in moderation. But recently, I've definitely had had to slow down on just constantly eating junk, and you know, had to be more wise about my approach with eating. So that definitely plays a part in it, I think, 100%.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like when I'm consuming like healthy food, it definitely does something to my brain where I feel good. And that feeling of feeling good is a positive, because then I think that actually does prevent a crisis. Although a crisis can pop up at any time for any reason, but it's like that feeling of feeling good about your body. There are pros to that that I would definitely recommend to anyone that has a chronic disease or an illness. You know, I think it's very important that you feel good. Do you drink alcohol?
Occasionally.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like I've had quite a few episodes where I've consumed like heavy amounts of alcohol or just mixing different drinks, which has sent me into crisis mode.
Yeah.
So
with alcohol, straight away, that's one of the worst things I think for crisis, because the amount of, it just dehydrates you. Beer, wine, all of that just sucks any you know what I'm saying? So that's why they say drink water, man. The best thing, I always have anyone who sees me, I always have a bottle of water. Just go to Costco and just buy big boxes. Yeah. That's the best way to consume, man.
No, definitely very important to stay hydrated. It's definitely, and water helps me a lot when it comes to working out. I go to the gym regularly, do various classes, yoga, Pilates, you know, carrying light weights, free weights, and I go at my own pace, and I think that's definitely helped with feeling good in both the mind and physical, which I do believe prevents sickle cell crisis. But obviously, the things that you do in the gym can be strenuous, which can lead to sickle cell crisis. But I think it's very important to understand your body and how to stay fit and get exercise.
I think strengthening as well is good. So when I'm in gym and I know that I just know stuff like back strengthening, knees, especially when I do stuff like legs and that, it strengthens my joints, strengthens my back, and the muscles able to strengthen the bones and all of that kind of stuff. So I always find that it's helpful to do more core strengthening and stuff like that. But with stuff like cardio, I hate running, man. Do
you know what? I've started doing cardio, but I don't do running. I cycle. Or I don't do anything that puts pressure on my joints. And that's been very helpful. I was starting off with like 15 minutes.
Swimming's good as well, man.
Swimming. The only thing is the temperature of the water,
Yeah,
coming out the water.
Exactly.
I've had traumatic experiences growing up with swimming, so
Same.
a bit traumatized with that. But you know, there are some facilities that provide warm swimming pools, so that's definitely helpful. But swimming is definitely one.
Yeah.
Cardio is quite important, but I think it's very important to understand your body and know your limits. I think I always know my limit, and I know that, you know, I can't cross that limit, because if I do, then I know what the consequence of that will be. I know you're enjoying this conversation, but I'm here to remind you that this episode is sponsored by Goodman Beard Oil, plant-based, chemical-free beard oil to soften and moisturize your facial hair. Order now, goodmanfactory.com, and use code GPOD1 and become a good man today. The Independent reported that the NHS are to investigate racial inequalities for the first time. What are your thoughts on that, and how did that make you feel when that article came out?
It's mad, because I remember a friend of mine who worked for the NHS in the sickle cell department, and spoke about the racism in regards to not just from doctors to patients or nurses to patients, but also those who work behind the scenes. And I think the first thing we have to understand is that sickle cell affects mostly black people. And those who are affected by sickle cell are mostly black and will always have a strain. So you won't meet one person that won't tell you a bad experience that they've had in hospital, whether it's with a nurse or a doctor, you know, not treating them right or not taking them seriously because of their health. We have to remember sickle cell is an invisible pain. You don't see it. If I was to have a crisis now, you won't see it on my body, but it's an inside pain we have. So the doctors really and nurses can only go according to how we're relaying our pain. And with sickle cell, because it affects mostly black people, you will understand that there will always be that strain and that push and that struggle for us getting our message or even our pain across when it comes to sickle cell. So don't be surprised when you see the word racism next to sickle cell, because it affects us. So of course we will be affected by everything that comes against black people. And that's a reality we have to deal with, man.
The BBC released an article saying black women are 4 times more likely to die in childbirth. So there is evidence of racism within healthcare, and unfortunately, black people are predominantly affected by sickle cell. So I've been through experiences where I felt like there's a lack of empathy for what I'm going through. I've turned up to A&E before and been refused oxygen. So as you know, with sickle cell, it's the lack of oxygen in your blood. So that causes pain. So if I'm turning up to hospital with pain, you know, one of the first things that they need to do is to provide oxygen, simple oxygen mask. And I've been refused that at A&E. So, you know, it's just encounters with people within the healthcare industry at the NHS that don't actually understand what you're going through. And it's like, but you've arrived for professional help.
Yeah, and people have died from that. Like the boy I told you about, Evan Nathan Smith, he died from lack of empathy and them not wanting to give him oxygen.
Neglect.
Yeah, neglect. And that's what it is. I feel like a part of that is racism.
Yeah. You
know what I'm saying? The boy is black. A lot of times you'll get a black man that goes into hospital. Already we're having to suppress how we feel, how we really feel. Because if anyone was to really express what they're going through in the sickle cell crisis, will be screaming down the whole hospital. As a black man, already I'm seen as intimidating by society. So I'm having to suppress my pain and really hold in my scream.
Yeah.
And because of that, you do not see me roll around the floor and all that. You don't want to believe that I'm actually going through the pain that I'm going through.
See, this is the thing. I feel like every time I turn up to hospital with a sickle cell crisis, I have to scream and shout to get the attention I want. But that's not in my nature.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe it's conditioning. But no matter how bad my experience is, like the pain that I'm feeling, I've trained myself to just deal with it and approach it in a very calm manner, which does benefit me. But then when you approach, you attend the hospital and you say, I'm going through a sickle cell crisis, and they look at you like, you don't look like
Exactly.
what you're going through is really bad.
Yeah.
So we're not going to take it as serious. But that's very bad. And I think that also explains why Black women are more likely to die in childbirth, because there's that issue of doctors and nurses looking at them like, you look strong.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of people look at Black people, our physical appearance, and think, you look strong, you look like you're healthy. I've had crazy reactions in hospital turning up with a crisis where people look at me and they're like, because, you know, there's a little bit of muscle in the chest area and a little bit of muscle in my arms, that you look fine.
You look fine.
You know, you look like what you're going through isn't that bad.
Yeah. So
we're going to treat it as like less important than someone who's screaming in pain. And it's funny because we said on a previous episode, a health episode with Dr. Aline, that one of the Goodman, Chris, he spoke about how his mum told him from young that when he goes to hospital, he needs to exaggerate his like what he's going through to be taken serious. And that's really real. Like, if you're not crying and screaming, which I can't do, then you're not being taken as serious as someone who is, you know, going through a sickle cell crisis. But yeah, negligence from doctors and nurses is a very serious issue. The fact that there was a young boy with sickle cell that had to call 999 from his hospital bed and then passed away. When you hear stories like that, how does that make you feel? Like, for me, that is one of the hearing the story alone is traumatic. Yeah. Knowing that people are being neglected in hospital and dying in their hospital beds because they're being ignored. And I've been in that position. I'm sure you have been too. Where you're in hospital, you're going through a sickle cell crisis, and no one's taking you seriously.
They're not believing you. Yeah.
But my response, or how I advise people to deal with it and how I deal with being in that position where they're not taking you seriously, is to bring hell onto earth. Like, move mad. Like, I know it's not the right thing to say, but I'm going to say it on our platform. Like, when you're going through a crisis, you have to cause hell on the ward. You have to tell every nurse and doctor about what you're going through, even if you have to scream it. Like, you have to call someone to come to the hospital to come and like defend you, like it's actually war. Like, you have to, because this is your life. Like,
I've had to tell off nurses and ambulances before. One time a nurse took an hour to give me treatment, and I'm in the hospital in A&E in pain. And my wife's telling her, why are you taking so long? Oh, he hasn't, and she said he hasn't got any open cuts, so it's not anything serious. And my wife flipped out. Like, how dare you make an assumption off of what you're just looking at, and someone's telling you they're in pain? Do you not know what a chronic illness is? It's something that, you know, mostly eats you alive inside. Like, you don't see it outside. And unfortunately, we've had to resolve in moving mad in hospitals to be believed, and that's sad. And
it always works. Have to move mad. Like, when it comes to your health, like, you do not play. When you're going through a crisis and doctors and nurses are not taking you seriously, move mad. Like, move crazy. It always works. Like, your health is not something to play with. Honestly, like, I'm not losing my life over your mistake, or you not understanding what I'm going through. You know the amount of times I've turned up to hospital with a sickle cell crisis, and I can see the doctor Googling what is sickle cell, and this is the person that's taking care of me. My health is not something to play with. So about 7 months ago, The Independent released an article saying, landmark sickle cell disease inquiry finds evidence of racism in patient care. Again, this is a big article that came out where they admitted that there is evidence of Black people being mistreated within healthcare
because of their race.
So yeah, it's quite sad to see. But obviously, this is why it's very important for, you know, organizations like yourself and others to come together to go against this, rather than waiting for the government to make action. Because when they say they're going to make action, what does that even look like?
Yeah, I feel like they say that to kind of shrug off the conversation. You know, we're planning on something, or we're going to take action against this and that. But, you know, a lot of times the people that actually are taking action and making a change are us.
Yeah.
Because we're raising awareness about these issues and we're complaining and letting them know we won't be treated like this anymore. So
another article came out from The Guardian saying attitudes to race need to change if sickle cell patients are to get the treatment they need. So yeah, that again supports this big problem that we have within the sickle cell community. One of the issues that we're currently going through in the sickle cell community is the government refusing. This is an article from The Independent. The government refuses to add sickle cell patients to the free prescription list. All my life, I've been paying for prescriptions. What would you say? Like, how does that make you feel when you see that the government have done that? I remember filling out so many petitions saying, you know, make prescriptions free, and they refuse it all the time.
Yeah, there's always a petition every year, I feel like, to make medicine free for sickle cell patients. Personally, I get mine free, but I'm aware that also a lot of people have to pay for their prescriptions, and that's appalling. You know, I feel like when you look at other chronic illnesses, again, a lot of times that approach is not there. So you have to look at the underlying issue all the time, and is that sickle cell affects mostly Black people. I won't stop stressing about that. And if it was another way, then the outcomes would be different.
Definitely. Another issue that I've seen within the sickle cell community that isn't really spoken about, I don't know why, but I feel like it's very important that we talk about it, is opioid addiction within the sickle cell community. So the amount of like young people, I don't know if older, but based on the conversations I've had, that are addicted to oxytocin and morphine. I've heard crazy stories of people turning up to hospital just to get high off the painkillers, which is bad because that then supports the people that I meet when I go to hospital that judge me and think that I'm here to get high when I'm here to get treated because of the pain that I'm going through. So what are your experiences like? What have you heard?
Personally, I've never met anyone who's been open with me about being addicted to morphine or anything like that, personally within the sickle cell community. But unfortunately, a reason why doctors and nurses, as you said, are hesitant on believing us is because I have heard of sickle cell patients being called junkies or druggies, or you're just here for the drugs and things like that. So it's a sad case, but we have to continue to fight our case for those who are, you know, truthful about, you know, their sickle cell, that, you know, we're not here just to get drugs, we're here for treatment. And as I said, no one likes to go just hospital just to go. Usually more time when you have a crisis, hospital is your last resort. You really want to start treating it at home. But because you know that this is a bit too much, I need to go on a bigger painkiller, got to go to hospital.
Definitely. I feel like that's something that people tend to like fail to understand, that nobody wants to be in a hospital. Nobody wants to be laying up in hospital for days and weeks. So when you turn up to hospital with a crisis, it's very serious. And who is a doctor or nurse to tell someone about what you are feeling when you know you don't even know what it feels like to go through a crisis. And another thing is, it's actually factual that the painkillers that they give us to treat our pain is addictive. Like there is a warning on it saying this is addictive, and that's the only thing that's offered to you from the healthcare professionals to deal with your crisis. So even if people do become addicted to it, it's known that the treatment you're giving them is addictive.
And you'll see people that are addicted to drugs outside of sickle cell that take things like morphine and stuff like that. So A
Star, thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking to me about sickle cell. I'm praying that this does make a lot of impact, and you know, voices speaks for people with sickle cell. So now, thank you very much for coming on, bro.
Thank you.
Highly appreciated. We appreciate you coming onto the Goodman Factory platform, and we welcome you like anytime. You know, we're in full support of you and the sickle cell community, and yeah, we just want to do our part to make the world a better place for people with sickle cell.
On a lighter note, I need some of that beard growth.
I got you, man. I got you.